Hey guys, I'm talking to you about one of my favorite guys today in the extraterrestrial phenomenon world, and it's Mr. Bob Lazar. I'm going to be talking to you about him and his introduction of Element 115, and I'm going to give you what I think is the real story. So, I'm first going to give you a little summary of how Element 115 is talked about today versus how it was in 1989. Okay? So today it's said that element 115 was discovered in 2003 in Dubna, Russia, at the Florov Laboratory for Nuclear Reactions by a group of scientists. Now, for the element, it eventually was renamed, and it's, as I understand it to be said, Moscovium. Moscovium? And that was because Dubna is a Russian city. So in Moscow. That was how the name correlated to Moscow. Now, it took years for researchers to work out the details of the element. And it wasn't until 2018 that Berkeley lab scientists figured out that the element's mass or atomic weight, which is, this is now going to, I'm going to tell you, this is all I know of the science, which is that's the total number of protons and neutrons in an atom. That's literally my extent of science knowledge. So, anyway, they figured out that the number was 288. Okay. Now, to nail down that number, they had to do extensive science, repetition of processes, very complex. I'm not going to bore you with the math because I wouldn't be able to explain it properly anyway. So, they came up with this and they also discovered that at the time, there's actually no practical use for this element today yet, other than research. But to date, it's not being used or applied for anything. There was a time years ago when Jeremy Corbell, who I'll talk about in this too, and Bob were on a talk show. I believe it was Larry King. I don't know. It must have been a while ago, but they were talking about the way that element 15 could actually be weaponized. So, it's a concern. Not sure how real it is because it's very unstable, but we're going to move past that for now. This is now it's the relationship between element 115 and the connection to extraterrestrials. So that was what Bob Lazar brought to the table in 1989. Now, he went public that year, at first using an alias of Dennis, which was his boss's name, who was not pleased that he used his name. But anyway, now he agreed to do an interview under this name, this alias, and with a blacked out face. With a well respected news reporter at the time out of Las Vegas named George Knapp, the investigative journalist who I've talked about it at exhaustion, he and Jeremy Corbell. Um, at the time, he was just starting to air interviews covering extraterrestrial topics. And he had like the kind of legendary at this point, John Lear, whose family, Learjet, I mean, they have a ton of inventions and stuff, but I don't want to get too into the minutia of him. But he and John Lear were talking about, possible secrets, mysteries that were held out at Area 51. Now, Lazar was a former employee there at Area 51. More specifically, he called it the S4 site. Okay. And his job was to reverse engineer crashed alien flying saucers. He said that he had personally worked on Element 115, which was used to pilot these alien spacecraft. Now, he also said at the time, and I quote, "It is impossible to synthesize an element that is heavy here on Earth. The substance has to come from a place where super heavy elements could have been produced naturally." He also said that he'd seen evidence of anti gravity propulsion technologies and 9 alien spacecraft stored in a hangar at Area 51. Now, those ships ostensibly uh, used some sort of propulsion system that harnessed the inherent power of gravity, thus utilized the characteristics of Element 115 to work their technologically, as he called it, wizardry. The government doesn't confirm nor deny anybody's employment at Area 51. So it wouldn't have mattered one way or the other if they confirmed it, because it goes for everybody at Area 51. They will never ever say that somebody worked there. So that's, to me, that's just a non-topic, a non-starter kind of thing. Now, Lazar's claims on the whole have never actually been disproven. However, they've never actually been proven either. So you either are like on board or not. I'm Team Bob. I believe everything he says. I believe what comes out of here. I believe what he has here. It's all genuine. I think he's the real deal. So now I bring Jeremy Corbell into the fold because he made a film with Bob, and it was called Bob Lazar, Area 51, and Flying Saucers. And he's come forward repeatedly to defend and confirm his staunch belief in all of Bob's claims. In an email that Jeremy shared, he shared some additional information, and here it is. This is what he wrote. These are his words, not mine. When Lazar first came forward in 1989, he made a point to explain that there's no reason a version of element 115 couldn't be synthesized. Not sure if my computer's working properly, but we'll just keep pushing on. It's stopped on me like 12 times, and I have this like strange feeling it's because of what I'm talking about. But I'm not going to get too crazy about that. He thinks that it can be synthesized and observed at some point in the future. In fact, he predicted that it would be observed, as did many, just likely not in a stabilized form because of the statistical improbability of landing on a relevant isotope. Now, see, this is science that I don't really understand. Just going to full disclosure on that. The isotope discovered in 2003 is not the isotope that would account for what Lazar has described, having worked on and had access to while being at Area 51. Site 4. Lazar reports that the 115 he had access to was far more stable. My understanding of not my, Jeremy's understanding of Lazar's thinking is that the advances in bombardment techniques, new isotopic combinations would be achieved. However, just like how gold has 37 different isotopes and only one isotope is stable, 115 is suspected to have mostly rapid decay isotopes. So, hopefully, in the future, we will land on a version with a longer half life, even if it just ends up being a few atoms of it. So that was in kind of like the summation of what he added to this research that I did. So, I mean, there you have, Jeremy's a great at kind of, he breaks down the science of things and sort of gets it to a layperson's, because he's not, like he never claims to be a scientist or anything like that. He isn't. He's a, you know, I just found out that he gets his real money from real estate of all things, but he's a researcher at heart. I mean, he's got the passion for it, and he's really good about laying it all out. Um, and this way, it's kind of easier to see what Bob Lazar was trying to explain to people in 1989 when he was talking about all this when he went public. So I also want to give kudos to George Knapp, and I need to disclose right now that this is my third video to try and make this one video. It has closed down on me every time I have said certain things. I'm not saying it's related to the topic of element 115, but I'm not saying it's not. I've never seen my computer do this. There's nothing strange going on in my house, no power surges, no nothing. I'm just saying. NSA, if you're listening, mind your own beeswax. I think I was saying that I wanted to say a kudos to George Knapp for taking a chance on a quirky physicist with some wild ideas and very little proof. And thankfully, Jeremy and George have recognized how effective they are as a team and have developed their podcast Weaponize, which I cannot recommend highly enough. It's fantastic. It also helps amateur researchers like myself understand a lot of the extraterrestrial phenomenon. So I would love to know what you think. And I'm going to wrap this up because I have no idea if I'm going to get cut off or if this is even going to air. I have no idea. But I hope until the next time, I hope that you're staying happy and healthy and stay weird. And because God knows my computer's acting, I'm totally weird. And take care. Bye.